20 most handsome black actors of the 1980s, then and now. Forget Hollywood's usual beauty standards. The 1980s gave rise to a league of black men who redefined what it meant to be handsome, powerful, and unforgettable. From the raw magnetism of Samuel L. Jackson to the effortless cool of Billy D. Williams, these icons weren't just attractive, they were game changers. This isn't your typical list. These are the men who owned every room, dominated every screen, and left audiences speechless, ready to relive the era of true black excellence. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's honor the legends who changed the face of Hollywood forever. Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington, born on December 28, 1954 in Mount Vernon, New York, emerged in the 1980s as a magnetic screen presence who radiated poise, intensity, and intelligence. He quickly distinguished himself from his peers not merely through appearance, but by exuding a silent power that captivated audiences. In 1987, his breakout film, Cry Freedom, where he portrayed South African anti-apartheid activist Steve Biko, garnered him his first Academy Award nomination. That same inner strength would become his signature, echoing through every role and making him a leading figure in cinema for decades. What set Washington apart during the 1980s wasn't just his perfectly sculpted features or statuesque build, but the way he embodied complex characters with quiet authority. Viewers weren't drawn to him solely because of his looks, though his chiseled jawline, deep-set eyes, and smooth voice were undeniable assets. They were pulled in by his ability to make any character feel real, vulnerable, and dignified. Whether he was wearing a tailored military uniform in A Soldier's Story 1984 or standing defiant as a civil rights martyr, Denzel projected elegance fused with restraint. Off-screen, his mystique only grew. Unlike many celebrities who chased the spotlight, Washington remained grounded, private, and deeply committed to his craft. This added an air of intrigue, enhancing his appeal further. By the end of the 1980s, he had become a leading man not only in terms of roles, but also as a symbol of strong, sophisticated black masculinity. His influence transcended entertainment. For many, he redefined what it meant to be a black leading man in Hollywood, sharp, confident, and powerful, without theatrics. Denzel Washington didn't just act, he led with presence, purpose, and perfection. Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy, born April 3, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York, wasn't just the funniest man of the 1980s, he was one of the most magnetic. Bursting onto the scene as a standout on Saturday Night Live in 1980, at only 19 years old, Murphy redefined sketch comedy with electric energy, sharp impersonations, and unmatched timing. But it was his film career that solidified his heartthrob status. From 48 Tar, hers 1982 to Beverly Hills Cop 1984, and Coming to America 1988. Murphy commanded every frame with a rare mix of swagger, wit, and confidence. Physically, Murphy had undeniable appeal. With a lean, athletic build, boyish grin, and expressive eyes, he captivated both male and female fans. But it was his boldness, the way he delivered lines, moved across a stage, or wore a sharp suit that made him unforgettable. He radiated the kind of confidence that wasn't rehearsed. It was instinctual. He didn't ask for attention, he demanded it without effort. Off-camera, Murphy broke barriers as one of the highest-paid actors of the decade, proving that a black performer could carry blockbuster films internationally. His influence stretched far beyond entertainment. He became a cultural movement. Young men emulated his fashion and humor, while audiences of all backgrounds found themselves drawn to his magnetic presence. By the close of the 80s, Murphy wasn't just a superstar, he was a symbol of unapologetic black excellence. In a decade where style and attitude mattered as much as talent, Eddie Murphy set the bar. His humor, paired with a natural, vibrant charisma, made him one of the most desirable and respected figures of his generation. A leading man who made you laugh, think, and fall in love often all at once. Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier. born February 20th, 1927 in Miami, Florida, stood as a towering figure of elegance and principle long before the 1980s, but his commanding presence continued to radiate throughout the decade. Already etched in history as the first black man to win an Academy Award for Best Actor, Lilies of the Field, 1963, Poitier remained a dignified force in both film and diplomacy during the 80s, showing that classic masculinity and refined charm never went out of style. Even in his later years, Poitier's presence was magnetic. His tall frame, noble bearing, and contemplative eyes gave him the aura of a statesman, and rightly so. In 1997, he would go on to serve as the Bahamian ambassador to Japan, but during the 1980s, he remained active behind the camera directing notable films such as Stir Crazy 1980 and Hanky Panky 1982. These directorial efforts reflected his keen eye and thoughtful approach to storytelling. What set Poitier apart in conversations about attractiveness wasn't youthful glamour, it was legacy. His calm demeanor, articulate speech, and unwavering grace made him an enduring symbol of sophisticated masculinity. He didn't need flash, his very presence commanded attention and respect. He exemplified the rare kind of beauty that transcended trends, poised, introspective, and deeply moral. As younger actors emerged, many still viewed Poitier as the gold standard, the model of how to carry oneself as a black man in a white-dominated industry. His legacy wasn't just one of talent, but of integrity, and that aura only added to his timeless allure. In a world often driven by excess, Sidney Poitier's restraint became his crown, and few ever wore it with such quiet majesty. Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes, born July 31st, 1962 in Orlando, Florida, stormed into the Hollywood spotlight in the late 1980s with a presence that was equal parts athleticism, coolness, and intensity. Trained in martial arts from age 12 and holding a 5th-degree black belt in Shotokan karate, Snipes wasn't just acting tough. He was the real deal. His physicality made him a natural fit for action films, but it was his sharp facial structure, intense gaze, and street-smart charisma that gave him an irresistible edge. He began turning heads with performances in Streets of Gold 1986 and Major League 1989. But his breakout stardom would explode in the 1990s. However, even before he reached full-blown celebrity status, his 1980s screen presence exuded danger, discipline, and magnetism. Unlike the polished charm of his contemporaries, Snipes offered something grittier, a raw, grounded masculinity shaped by both urban experience and disciplined craft. His sense of style matched his energy, bold, sleek, and unafraid to stand out. Whether in leather jackets or tailored suits, Snipes carried himself with confidence and agility, often looking like he could take down a room with either a smile or a roundhouse kick. It was this duality, the fighter and the thinker, that made him alluring. By the decade's end, audiences saw in Snipes a new kind of black leading man, unapologetically tough, stylish, and intellectually sharp. He redefined the action hero for a new generation, not just with fists and stunts, but with soul and sharpness. Wesley Snipes didn't simply arrive, he attacked the screen with a force that made him unforgettable, ushering in a bold era of black masculinity in action cinema. Billy Dee Williams. Billy Dee Williams, born April 6, 1937 in New York City, was already a seasoned performer by the time the 1980s began, but his allure only intensified as he reprised his role as Lando Calrissian in The Empire Strikes Back, 1980. His velvet voice, relaxed demeanor, and perfectly groomed appearance made him the epitome of suave. He wasn't trying to be charming, he was charm incarnate. With every glance and every line, he conveyed elegance, experience, and effortless confidence. In a time when black men were often forced into limited roles, Williams emerged as the Hollywood gentleman, a romantic, a leader, a man of taste. His smooth delivery and regal presence allowed him to transcend stereotypes. Whether piloting the Millennium Falcon or starring in romantic dramas like Lady Sings the Blues, he brought a calm charisma that was both dignified and disarming. Physically, Williams had a distinctive handsomeness, a graceful mix of soft sophistication and masculine confidence. His mustache became iconic and his tailored suits were always impeccable. But beyond the looks, he exuded a kind of kindness and assurance that made him not just attractive, but deeply admired. What truly set him apart was his ability to appeal across generations and cultures. He wasn't just a favorite among black audiences, he was a universally beloved figure who represented cool at its most classic. In the 1980s, when glitz and glamour were at their peak, Billy D. Williams stood as the embodiment of timeless elegance, a man who needed no flash to steal the show. Blair Underwood. Blair Underwood, born August 25, 1964 in Tacoma, Washington, entered the public eye in the late 1980s and immediately commanded attention with his polished good looks and calm confidence. When he joined the cast of L.A. Law in 1987 as the ambitious young attorney Jonathan Rollins Underwood, didn't just play a role, he redefined the image of the professional black man on mainstream television. With his smooth voice, rich brown skin, and piercing eyes, he projected an image of both success and sincerity. Unlike many heartthrobs of the era who relied solely on ruggedness or humor, Underwood's appeal stemmed from a blend of intelligence class and approachability. He had the look of a model angular jawline, athletic build, and impeccable grooming, but what drew audiences in was his emotional depth. He portrayed characters who were thoughtful and passionate, often navigating power and vulnerability with equal strength. Off-screen, Underwood was known for his articulate interviews and gracious demeanor, further cementing his image as a new kind of leading man, educated, grounded, and socially conscious. While many actors chased flash and controversy in the late 80s, Underwood carved out a lane of sophistication, showing that young black men could be leading men without sacrificing integrity or elegance. By the close of the decade, Blair Underwood was more than just a fresh face. He was a beacon of progressive masculinity in Hollywood, combining contemporary charm with a timeless romantic sensibility that resonated with audiences across race, gender, and generation. Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman, born June 1, 1937 in Memphis, Tennessee, carried a commanding presence that defied traditional standards of handsome, yet he possessed a magnetism that was impossible to ignore. In 1987, Freeman stunned audiences with his powerful performance in Street Smart, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. His portrayal of a complex streetwise hustler revealed not just acting mastery, but a rare, simmering intensity that mesmerized viewers. Freeman's appeal wasn't built on youthful exuberance or sharp tailoring. It was born from authenticity, wisdom, and a quiet confidence that radiated from every gesture. His deep, velvety voice, now iconic, conveyed gravitas, while his subtle expressions drew audiences into the emotional core of every character. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but he always left the deepest impression. Visually, Freeman exuded a natural, lived-in handsomeness. With his salt-and-pepper hair, thoughtful eyes, and steady gaze, he portrayed characters with emotional resonance and intellectual weight. Unlike others chasing stardom through flash, Freeman emerged as a thinker, a man whose looks spoke of strength, resilience, and insight. Throughout the late 1980s, Freeman became the face of experience and complexity. He portrayed men who had weathered storms, who spoke few words but meant every one. His unique brand of masculinity gave Hollywood a different kind of hero, one rooted in maturity and inner strength. Morgan Freeman didn't need action scenes or romantic subplots to be captivating. His mere presence transformed scripts, elevated ensembles, and left a legacy that proved enduring appeal isn't about age. It's about authenticity, character, and emotional truth. James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones, born January 17, 1931 in Arcaboutla, Mississippi, brought a unique kind of allure to the 1980s, one that came not from youthful glamour, but from his majestic voice, unshakable poise, and intense gravitas. Already celebrated for his work in theater and film, Jones entered the decade as a revered performer whose presence could dominate any scene with subtle authority. While his face was less often seen on screen than heard, his deep, unmistakable voice as Darth Vader in the Star Wars saga made him an international icon. Jones's attractiveness wasn't conventional, it was intellectual and powerful. His commanding delivery, expressive diction, and slow, deliberate movements evoked the image of a scholar warrior. Films like Conan the Barbarian, 1982, and Gardens of Stone, 1987, showcased his versatility, allowing him to play both leaders and introspective figures with equal force. What made him so compelling was the mixture of serenity and strength, a man who rarely raised his voice but still managed to shake the room. Off-screen, Jones was known for overcoming a lifelong struggle with stuttering, making his rise even more inspiring. He was the embodiment of resilience, a living reminder that depth, not flash, holds the true essence of a star. With every word and glance, he gave the impression of wisdom earned, not inherited. Throughout the 1980s, James Earl Jones represented a different kind of leading man, one of wisdom, dignity, and profound emotional resonance. He was the kind of actor whose mere presence elevated a film's weight, proving that charisma could be quiet, magnetic, and enduring. Danny Glover. Danny Glover, born July 22, 1946 in San Francisco, California, emerged in the 1980s as a powerful figure who brought depth, vulnerability, and moral clarity to every character he portrayed. His defining moment came in Lethal Weapon 1987, where he starred as Sergeant Roger Murtaugh, a seasoned, responsible family man, opposite Mel Gibson's reckless partner. Glover wasn't the flashy, reckless type. He was the anchor, the soul, the man who kept things together, and audiences loved him for it. What made Glover compelling wasn't classic heartthrob appeal, but his quiet magnetism and grounded masculinity. With his tall frame, thoughtful expressions, and expressive eyes, he brought gravitas to roles that might otherwise be forgettable. His characters were always layered, firm, yet empathetic, weary, yet determined. He showed that a man didn't need to be loud or violent to be strong. Glover also carried an aura of real-life integrity. Off the screen, he was known for his humanitarian activism, lending his voice to causes such as workers' rights, African development, and racial equality. This deeper commitment added to his allure. Audiences sensed that he wasn't just acting like a good man, he truly was one. In a decade known for excess, Glover represented balance. He offered a portrait of black masculinity rooted in responsibility, compassion, and resilience. His presence was warm yet commanding, making him both relatable and admirable. Danny Glover wasn't just a star of the screen, he was a symbol of principled leadership and emotional depth, redefining what it meant to be a hero both in character and in life. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor, born December 1, 1940 in Peoria, Illinois, was far more than a legendary comedian. He was a raw, emotionally complex performer whose unique appeal combined vulnerability, defiance, and charisma. By the 1980s, Pryor was one of the most recognizable figures in entertainment, not just for his razor-sharp stand-up routines, but for his dramatic range and surprising tenderness in films like JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling, 1986, a semi-autobiographical look into his personal struggles. Physically, Pryor wasn't what Hollywood traditionally labeled a leading man, but he possessed a quiet, electrifying magnetism. His expressive face, soulful eyes, and animated body language gave him an emotional transparency that drew people in. He had the kind of smile that made people lean closer and a vulnerability that made his pain relatable, whether he was delivering a punchline or bearing his soul. What truly set Pryor apart was his authenticity. He didn't hide his battles with drug addiction, self-doubt, or fame, and instead used them as fuel to connect with millions. His transparency was revolutionary. At a time when many celebrities hid behind publicists and carefully curated images, Pryor stood exposed, often brutally honest, and it made him unforgettable. In the 1980s, his blend of humor and truth felt radical, and it also made him heartbreakingly human. He wasn't just the funniest man in the room, he was the most real. And in that realness, audiences found comfort, courage, and yes, attraction. Richard Pryor was flawed, fearless, and ultimately unforgettable, the kind of man who could make you laugh, cry, and care in a single breath. Louis Gossett Jr. Louis Gossett Jr., born May 27, 1936 in Brooklyn, New York, became one of the most respected actors of the 1980s through a combination of gravitas, discipline, and unshakable presence. His defining moment came in An Officer and a Gentleman, 1982, where his portrayal of the hard-nosed drill instructor Sergeant Emile Foley earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, the first black actor to win in that category. His performance was a masterclass in intensity and honor, earning him both critical acclaim and widespread admiration. Standing tall with a powerful build, chiseled features, and a commanding voice, Gossett embodied the essence of authority. But it wasn't just physical, it was the controlled energy he brought to every role. He had a way of holding a scene with a glance or a word projecting leadership without raising his voice. He was the type of man whose silence said more than others' speeches. Off-screen Gossett was equally principled. He used his platform to speak out against racism and support at-risk youth, establishing the Eracism Foundation to promote tolerance and education. This combination of advocacy and talent deepened his allure. He wasn't just a respected actor, he was a role model. In an era overflowing with flashy personalities, Gossett offered something different: quiet, power-polished professionalism and unwavering dignity. His characters weren't just men. They were mentors, soldiers, fathers, and pillars of wisdom. Louis Gossett Jr. didn't just act strong, he was strength. And his legacy remains as one of Hollywood's most commanding and honorable presences. Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers, born January 14, 1948 in New Orleans. Louisiana brought to the 1980s screen a blend of athletic dominance and charismatic flair that few could rival. A former professional football player, Weathers transitioned into acting with physical confidence and screen-commanding energy. His defining role as Apollo Creed in the Rocky franchise placed him at the center of one of the most iconic film series of all time. With his finely chiseled physique, piercing eyes, and bold swagger, he became the very image of strength and style. In Rocky II, 1979, and Rocky III, 1982, Weathers embodied not just a formidable opponent, but a character full of pride, elegance, and heart. His portrayal was layered. Creed wasn't just a fighter, he was a showman, a businessman, and a man of dignity. That complexity made Weathers more than an action figure, it made him magnetic. But his talents extended beyond boxing roles. In films like Predator 1987 alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, he stood toe-to-toe with action giants and delivered performances infused with authority and intensity. Whether in combat gear or a sharp suit, Weathers exuded an unforced charm that captivated viewers. Unlike other action stars, Weathers didn't rely solely on brute force. He blended intellect, style, and physical power into a dynamic package. Off-screen, he maintained a reputation for professionalism and humility, further deepening his appeal. His later resurgence in The Mandalorian reminded the world of his enduring presence and versatility. Carl Weathers wasn't just a man of action, he was a symbol of polished masculinity, a performer who redefined what it meant to be strong, sophisticated, and supremely watchable in an era that celebrated bold heroes. LeVar Burton. LeVar Burton, born February 16, 1957, in Landstuhl, West Germany, brought a quiet brilliance to 1980s television that changed the landscape of how black men were seen in media. His breakthrough came earlier in the 1977 miniseries Roots, where his portrayal of Kunta Kinte left an indelible mark on American culture. But it was during the 1980s that Burton became a household name thanks to his role as Geordi LaForge in Star Trek The Next Generation, debuting in 1987, and as the beloved host of Reading Rainbow. What made Burton stand out wasn't ruggedness or flash, it was sincerity. With his warm eyes, soft-spoken demeanor, and radiant smile, he represented intelligence, curiosity, and kindness. While Hollywood often leaned into aggressive male archetypes, Burton offered a different model: the intellectual hero, the empathetic guide, the man who empowered through wisdom rather than force. His appeal to audiences transcended age. As the face of Reading Rainbow from 1983 to 2006, he didn't just entertain children, he inspired generations to embrace books, learning, and imagination. That nurturing presence, combined with his futuristic flair in Star Trek, made him a uniquely multi-dimensional figure. Physically, Burton's boyish charm, expressive features, and comforting voice created an aura that was disarming and endearing. He wasn't a leading man in the conventional romantic sense, but he was someone you trusted, someone whose soulfulness felt authentic and magnetic. LeVar Burton's 1980s legacy isn't just about fame, it's about impact. He showed that brilliance, emotional intelligence, and compassion could be deeply attractive traits, and in doing so redefined masculinity for an entire generation of viewers. Gregory Hines. Gregory Hines, born February 14, 1946 in New York City, was a dazzling force of nature whose 1980s stardom fused unmatched rhythm, magnetic charisma, and expressive artistry. Known primarily for his mastery of tap dance, Hines brought something rarely seen in male performers: a seamless blend of athleticism and grace. Whether dancing on Broadway or acting on the big screen, he radiated a unique charm that was joyful, soulful, and undeniably attractive. In films like The Cotton Club, 1984, White Nights, 1985, and Running Scared, 1986, Hines broke ground by showing that a dancer could be a leading man. He wasn't just performing steps, he was telling stories through movement, expression, and presence. His charm came from how he carried himself: confident, smooth, and always in sync with the rhythm of the world around him. He didn't try to dominate a scene, he simply belonged in it. Hines had a smile that lit up the screen and a demeanor that combined humor, sensitivity, and understated strength. Off-stage, he was known for being approachable and genuine, reinforcing the everyman appeal that made him such a beloved figure. Unlike the muscle-bound action stars of the era, Hines redefined what it meant to be masculine, proving that elegance, wit, and emotional expression were not only valid, but deeply attractive. His musicality was intoxicating, and his ability to balance sensuality with sincerity made him one of the most captivating figures of his time. Gregory Hines didn't just dance, he glided through the 1980s with an irresistible rhythm, leaving behind a legacy of class, creativity, and effortless cool. Arsenio Hall. Arsenio Hall, born February 12, 1956, in Cleveland, Ohio, redefined the landscape of late-night television in the late 1980s with a blend of quick wit, electric energy, and trend-setting swagger. As the host of the Arsenio Hall Show, which debuted in 1989, he became a cultural phenomenon, especially among younger audiences and communities that had long been overlooked by traditional talk shows. Hall's appeal wasn't based on conventional leading man looks. Instead, he stood out with his sharp features, infectious smile, stylish wardrobe, and a personality that could light up a room. He exuded urban cool, a mixture of confidence, humor, and authenticity that made guests and viewers feel at ease. Whether interviewing celebrities or delivering punchlines, he did it with a rhythm all his own. Before dominating, Late Night Hall made waves as Eddie Murphy's sidekick in Coming to America 1988, where his comedic timing and versatility stood out. He played multiple roles with flair, proving that his talent extended far beyond stand-up. That performance alone showcased his range from goofy to suave and solidified his place in pop culture. Arsenio was also a style icon of the era, often seen in tailored suits, bold colors, and signature high-top fades. He brought a fresh, youthful edge to television that felt distinctly modern and unapologetically black. More than just a host, Arsenio Hall became a movement, a symbol of what entertainment could be when it broke boundaries and embraced authenticity. His blend of style smarts and showmanship made him not only influential, but undeniably handsome in a way that was bold, fresh, and unforgettable. Glynn Turman, born January 31st, 1947 in New York City, has long embodied the essence of understated brilliance. By the 1980s, Turman had already built a solid reputation as a thoughtful, versatile actor, but it was his magnetic presence and quietly confident demeanor that made him stand out. With expressive eyes, a smooth voice, and a grounded energy, he brought depth and relatability to every character he portrayed. Best known early in his career for his role as Preach in Cooley High, 1975, Turman transitioned into the 1980s with a commanding mix of maturity and subtle sex appeal. On shows like A Different World, where he played Colonel Bradford Taylor, Turman offered a portrayal of black masculinity that was wise, measured, and emotionally layered. He didn't need to raise his voice to hold your attention. His gravitas spoke volumes. Physically, Turman was effortlessly attractive, clean-cut, expressive, and often exuding a gentlemanly charm. He could shift from firm authority to warm mentor without missing a beat, making him especially appealing to viewers who valued intellect as much as looks. Behind the scenes, Turman was also a writer and director, further adding to his mystique. His creative intelligence shone through not just in his performances, but in how he carried himself, calm, collected, and deeply committed to storytelling. In a decade where brashness often defined stardom, Glynn Turman reminded audiences that poise, intelligence, and heart could be just as if not more attractive. His presence left a lasting imprint on both television and film, solidifying his role as a thoughtful, captivating figure in 1980s Black Hollywood. Ossie Davis. Ossie Davis, born December 18, 1917 in Cogdell, Georgia, brought to the 1980s a level of distinguished allure that transcended age and convention. By then, he was already a revered figure in theater, film, and the civil rights movement. But what made Davis undeniably captivating wasn't just his career, it was his integrity, voice of reason, and a quiet fire that always seemed to smolder beneath his words. Whether acting in powerful dramas or directing socially conscious films, Davis maintained an air of gentlemanly strength. His roles in films like Do the Right Thing, 1989, though brief, left deep impressions. With a stately bearing, sharp features, and commanding baritone, he often played wise elders, mentors, and men of conviction. But beneath the gravitas was a passionate soul, one that made his presence feel warm, familiar, and powerful. Davis wasn't known for flashy roles or celebrity antics. Instead, he exemplified a rare kind of attractiveness, rooted in principles, compassion, and unwavering moral clarity. His decades-long partnership with Ruby Dee, both romantic and professional, added to his aura. Together, they were a beacon of black excellence, activism, and love. Physically, Davis projected a calm dignity. Whether in a three-piece suit or delivering a passionate speech, he exuded confidence rooted in lived experience. He was the embodiment of quiet leadership and emotional intelligence, a man who didn't seek the spotlight but naturally drew it. In the 1980s, Ossie Davis represented something more enduring than youthful charm, timeless character. He stood as a reminder that true attractiveness lies in integrity, intellect, and a legacy of purposeful action. Clarence Williams III, born August 21, 1939 in New York City, brought a brooding, enigmatic energy to the screen that set him apart from his peers. Known for his breakout role as undercover cop Link Hayes in the Mod Squad 1968 to 1973, Williams carried that same mysterious allure into the 1980s, evolving into one of Hollywood's most compelling character actors. With sharp cheekbones, intense eyes, and a quiet, storm-like presence, he had a look that was both unconventional and deeply captivating. In the 1980s, he appeared in roles that matched his complex persona. His performance as Prince's troubled father in Purple Rain 1984 was haunting and unforgettable, embodying generational trauma, artistic passion, and quiet rage with chilling authenticity. There was always something simmering beneath the surface when Williams was on screen, and it gave his performances a layered, magnetic quality. Williams wasn't flashy or traditionally styled for heartthrob roles, but that was his strength. His appeal came from unpredictability. You never quite knew what his character might do next. That unpredictability, coupled with emotional intensity, made him one of the most fascinating presences of his time. Off-screen Williams maintained an air of privacy, never courting fame or tabloid attention. This added to his mystique, as did his deep involvement in stage work and dramatic roles. He brought artistry and emotional risk to every project. Clarence Williams III wasn't about smooth lines or smiling charm. He was raw magnetism. In an era obsessed with image, he offered something more soulful. The power of silence, the edge of rebellion, and the beauty of emotional truth hidden in shadow. Ving Rhames. Ving Rhames, born May 12, 1959 in New York City, emerged in the late 1980s as a commanding actor whose combination of strength, gravitas, and raw masculinity demanded attention. With his deep, resonant voice and formidable physicality, Rhames brought a type of intensity to the screen that few others could match. Even before his mainstream breakout in the 90s, his work in Native Son 1986 revealed a serious, committed performer, capable of nuanced and emotionally charged roles. Rhames had a distinctive look, bald head, broad shoulders, and a steely gaze that challenged Hollywood's narrow standards of attractiveness. He didn't fit the mold of the pretty boy heartthrob, and that's exactly what made him so appealing. His characters weren't just strong, they were intelligent, layered, and often morally complex. Whether playing a hardened criminal, a protective friend, or a quiet philosopher, Rhames brought humanity to roles that could have easily become one-dimensional. In a sea of smooth-talking charmers, Rhames stood out with his weighty presence and grounded performances. He exuded strength without bravado, intensity without chaos. His portrayal of authority figures and men with inner demons revealed a unique emotional range beneath the toughness. Outside of his work, Rhames carried himself with humility and quiet confidence. He wasn't loud in the press, but was deeply respected among peers for his dedication to the craft and his integrity. As his career progressed, roles in projects like Pulp Fiction and Mission Impossible would further amplify the power he brought to the screen. Ving Rhames in the 1980s laid the groundwork for a new archetype of black leading man, one who didn't chase attention but commanded it not through showmanship but through substance. Samuel L. Jackson, born December 21, 1948 in Washington, D.C., began making a name for himself in the late 1980s, not as a typical romantic lead or action star, but as a force of personality unlike anything Hollywood had seen. With a distinctive voice, intense stare, and razor-sharp delivery, Jackson exuded an energy that was raw, unpredictable, and captivating. Though his career would explode in the 1990s, his foundation was laid in the late 80s, with standout roles in Spike Lee's School Daze 1988 and Do the Right Thing 1989, where his fiery presence left lasting impressions despite limited screen time. What made Jackson handsome wasn't a polished image or conventional good looks. It was attitude. He projected authenticity, edge, and confidence. His bald head, angular features, and expressive eyes gave him a distinctive look, but it was the way he spoke with a rhythm, a bite, and a swagger that made him magnetic. He didn't blend in. He cut through. Jackson's handsomeness was rooted in how unapologetically himself he was. He wasn't trying to be charming. He was commanding. Whether playing a streetwise radio DJ or a rebellious supporting character, he brought intensity that lingered long after the credits rolled. Off-screen, he was known for his journey through addiction recovery and his commitment to stage work, which refined his skills before the world caught up with his talent. There was grit behind his charisma, and audiences sensed that realness. He was sharp, dangerous, and always 2 steps ahead. In a decade filled with smooth-talking stars and clean-cut heroes, Samuel L. Jackson represented something bolder, The man who didn't conform, who dared to stand out, and who, even before he became a legend, made you stop, watch, and remember. Which of these legendary men truly defined black excellence in the 1980s? Was it Denzel's unwavering poise, Eddie's infectious charisma, or Samuel L. Jackson's explosive presence? Each brought something unforgettable to the screen, from sophistication to streetwise swagger. But if you had to choose one as the ultimate symbol of handsomeness and influence, who would it be? Let us know your pick in the comments and don't hold back. Subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence for more deep dives into the icons who shaped culture, broke barriers, and still leave us in awe.